Hello, and welcome to Inherited Dawn, a One Piece podcast. We are back, and we are diving deep into the Baratie.
This is Chapter 54, titled Pearl.
And this is the one. This is the chapter where we finally learn what makes Sanji tick. It's not about the food, it's not about the flirting. It's about what happens when you threaten a cook's tools. He puts his foot down. Literally. And with so much style, it's super.
And we also see what happens when Don Krieg gets impatient. His definition of a fair fight, it turns out, involves attacking someone from behind while they're completely distracted. A tactical decision, perhaps, but not one that speaks to a great deal of confidence in his own strength.
It is an incredible chapter for establishing character. I mean, we talk a lot about how Oda uses flashbacks to build out a character's history, but sometimes he just lays it all out on the table in a single action, a single line of dialogue. If you want to keep up with every single time Oda lays a foundation stone for a Straw Hat's identity, you gotta make sure you're following the show. This chapter is a cornerstone.
Let's begin. The chapter opens on total chaos. The Krieg pirates are swarming the Baratie's fins, using them as makeshift bridges to board the restaurant ship, and the chefs are right there to meet them.
It's a full-on brawl, a seafaring kitchen nightmare, and both sides are just screaming about how they're tougher. Krieg's guys are shouting about surviving the Grand Line, which, is a decent resume builder in the pirate world, but the chefs are yelling back that they survived Zeff's training, which is probably worse.
It's a fascinating contrast. One group's trial was the world's most dangerous sea, an impersonal, chaotic force of nature. The other's was the tutelage of one of the world's most dangerous men, a personal, focused, and unrelenting crucible. It poses the question, what is more difficult to endure? The wrath of nature, or the focused will of a man like Red-Leg Zeff?
You can see the answer in how they fight, too. These chefs aren't just flailing. They're a unit. They're using frying pans as shields, meat cleavers as axes, and there's this one guy swinging a giant pepper grinder like a club. They're pirates who cook, and they fight like it. They know their ship, they know the terrain, and most importantly, they know each other. They're moving with a practiced chaos that the Krieg pirates just can't match.
The Krieg pirates, for all their talk of being an armada, fight like a mob. They have numbers, but they lack cohesion. They're a collection of individuals bound by fear of their captain. The chefs of the Baratie, however, are a crew bound by a shared and very specific identity.
And just when the battle is in full swing, when it looks like the sheer numbers might be too much, two familiar faces return.
Patty and Carne. Last we saw them, they were at the epicenter of an explosion caused by their own weapon, the Sabagashira Eye.
Yeah, their giant fish-shaped tank. They got blasted point blank by Don Krieg, and here they are, they just climb out of the wreckage, covered in soot, brush themselves off, and rejoin the fight like it was nothing more than a kitchen mishap.
The durability of people in this world is something else. It's like, oh, did a cannonball go off in my face? Give me a second to dust off my apron.
They immediately start rallying the other chefs. Patty in particular gets right back into his role as a leader, and he gives this incredible, impassioned speech.
It's so good. It's raw and it's loud and it's from the heart. He's yelling at them, reminding them what they're fighting for. It's not just a restaurant. It's their home. It's their flag. It's the very symbol of their existence.
He says something very specific, and it's a line that completely recontextualizes the entire restaurant. He reminds them that they're all outcasts, shunned from ordinary restaurants because they're cooks who fight. No other restaurant would have us, he screams.
That hit hard. That one line. The Baratie isn't just a place they work. It's the only place that will have them. It's their freedom. It's their island of misfit toys. Think about it. In a normal kitchen, you get in a fist fight, you're fired. These guys probably got fired from every restaurant on the sea until they found this one. Zeff gave them a place where they could be exactly who they are. Cooks and fighters, without having to apologize for it.
It reframes the whole conflict. They aren't just defending property or a business. They're defending their identity. It's a sanctuary for a very specific kind of person who was told they didn't belong anywhere else. This is a recurring theme in Oda's writing, the creation of spaces for those who don't fit into the rigid structures of the rest of the world. Drum Kingdom for outcast doctors, Water 7 for shipwrights who push the boundaries, and here the Baratie for cooks with battle in their hearts.
And that's why they fight so damn hard. It's for Zeff, for the restaurant, but mostly for themselves, for the found family that took them in when no one else would. That speech lights a fire under all of them. You see their faces change. It's not just a brawl anymore, it's a crusade.
It's a powerful moment of unity. The chefs, rallied and renewed, push back with ferocious intensity. But it's immediately and abruptly interrupted.
Yeah, by a guy covered in pearls? Like hundreds of them, all over his armor. It's the most gaudy, ridiculous thing I've seen since Buggy's makeup.
A man who introduces himself as Pearl, the second mate of the Krieg Armada. He's massive, covered head to toe in iron plate armor, and that armor is embedded with giant, perfectly round pearls. He carries 2 large pearl-encrusted bucklers as well. His whole aesthetic is impenetrable opulence.
He just appears behind Patty and Carne while they're in the middle of their big emotional rallying cry. The disrespect is immediate. He doesn't even let them finish. He starts going on about how he's the Invincible Pearl.
Anyone who feels the need to give themselves a title like Invincible is broadcasting a deep insecurity. He's not just telling his enemies he's strong, he's trying to convince himself. He's daring the world to find a crack in his facade.
He's got this whole shtick about how his skin is also invincible, even without the armor. He claims he's never shed a single drop of blood in his life, and to prove his point, he just decks Patty and Carne, takes them both out with a single brutal punch to their chests. After they just survived a cannonball, he just flattens them.
His message is clear, and it's a direct rebuttal to Patty's speech. Your passion, your unity, your found family, it means nothing against my raw power and my impenetrable defense. It's the cynical worldview of the Krieg pirates personified. Might makes right, and emotional bonds are just a weakness to be exploited.
It's a real mood killer. The chefs are all fired up one second, and the next their 2 loudest champions are down for the count, and this giant disco ball of a man is standing over them. While this is happening, some of Krieg's grunts see an opening. They're not going for the chefs, they're not trying to push forward, they go for Carne's knives, which he must have dropped when he was knocked out.
And that is the trigger.
That's the moment. Sanji, who has been standing on the upper deck watching this whole time with a cigarette dangling from his lips, finally moves. And he doesn't go for Pearl. He doesn't go for the main threat who just took out his crewmates. He goes for the nameless grunts trying to steal his friend's knives. The priority is immediate and absolute.
He moves so fast. The panels barely capture it. He's a blur of black and white. The suit, the shoes, the cigarette smoke trailing behind him. He leaps from the upper deck down to the fin.
He launches himself into the air and just unleashes this storm of kicks. It's not just one kick, it's a flurry. Collier, épaule, côtelette, selle, poitrine, gigot. A full-course meal of pain. He takes out every single pirate trying to touch those knives without laying a single hand on them. It's pure, beautiful precision. He lands as gracefully as he took off.
He lands, scoops up the knives from the deck, and tosses them back to his fallen comrade, placing them gently on Carne's chest. The way he handles them, even for a moment, it's with a reverence you wouldn't expect to see in the middle of a war zone. They aren't just tools, they're an extension of the chef himself.
And that's when we get it. Pearl is taunting him. Why didn't you use your hands, you fool? And Sanji just calmly takes a drag from his cigarette and explains it. I don't fight with my hands. A cook's hands are his life. They're for creating food for others.
This is his code. It's the core of his entire being laid bare in one moment. His hands are sacred. They are instruments of creation, of nourishment, of life. To use them for destruction would be to defile his very purpose for existing.
It's a real badass character introduction I've ever seen. And it's not about being strong or tough or fearless. It's about having principles you will not break, no matter what. He's found a way to be a lethal fighter that doesn't compromise his identity as a chef. As a craftsman myself, I get that on a spiritual level. My hands are for building ships, for creating things that will carry my friends' dreams across the sea. To use them to just break things feels wrong. Sanji's code is the cook's version of the craftsman's code.
It has to come from Zeff. This isn't a rule Sanji just made up on the spot. This feels like a philosophy that was beaten into him, probably literally, by his mentor. The hands that feed people must be protected at all costs. It speaks to a deep, profound respect for the act of cooking. It elevates it from a mere profession to a sacred calling. I could even speculate that Zeff, a pirate who surely had to use his hands for violence in his past, developed this philosophy out of regret to ensure his protégé's hands would remain pure in a way his never could.
It also explains his entire unique fighting style. He's developed this whole kick-based martial art, which is incredibly difficult because of that single, simple rule. That's dedication. That's a cook's soul right there. He didn't just accept a limitation, he turned it into his greatest strength.
Pearl, of course, doesn't understand this at all. To his simplistic worldview, refusing to use your hands is just a handicap. He sees it as a weakness, a foolish affectation.
He starts mocking Sanji, calling him a fool and bragging about his own strength. And this is where he says the thing that's going to bite him. He hammers home the point again, claiming he's never bled, not once, in any of his battles. He's making his invulnerability the centerpiece of the confrontation.
He's completely wrapped up in his own legend. His armor isn't just physical, it's psychological. He has constructed an identity around the idea that he cannot be harmed. As long as he doesn't bleed, his legend is real. If he bleeds, the entire construct shatters.
So Sanji decides to test that theory. He puts out his cigarette, gets into his stance, and gets ready to attack Pearl head-on. The tension is ratcheting up. It's a clash of ideologies. The man who fights for a principle versus the man who fights only for his own reputation. Luffy, meanwhile, is just on the side, watching all of this unfold with a huge, delighted grin on his face. He's found another cool, strong guy. He's just enjoying the show.
And Don Krieg, ever the opportunist, sees this. He sees Luffy, the boy who shattered his flagship, his primary target, completely distracted and unguarded.
And he takes the cheapest shot imaginable. No honor, no warning, he just attacks Luffy from behind. So Sanji decides to test that theory. He puts out his cigarette, gets into his stance, and gets ready to attack Pearl head-on. The tension is ratcheting up. It's a clash of ideologies. The man who fights for a principle versus the man who fights only for his own reputation. Luffy, meanwhile, is just on the side, watching all of this unfold with a huge, delighted grin on his face. He's found another cool, strong guy. He's just enjoying the show.
And Don Krieg, ever the opportunist, sees this. He sees Luffy, the boy who shattered his flagship, his primary target, completely distracted and unguarded.
And he takes the cheapest shot imaginable. No honor, no warning, he just attacks Luffy from behind while his attention is entirely on Sanji and Pearl. He fires off one of the explosive projectiles from his armor.
It tells you everything you need to know about Don Krieg's character. He preaches about power and his grand armada, but the second an opportunity for a dishonorable advantage presents itself, he takes it without hesitation. For him, a fight is not a contest of wills. It is a problem to be solved by the most efficient means.
He's a pragmatist in the worst way. There is no code. There is no respect for the fight. There is only winning, and the method doesn't matter. He's the ultimate hypocrite. He calls pirates like Zeff has-beens, but he won't even face a rookie head-on.
It's the complete antithesis of Sanji, who just laid out his deeply held personal code moments before. Oda presents us with two opposing philosophies back to back. The man who will handicap himself to uphold his principles, and the man who will abandon all principles for a momentary advantage.
Luffy gets sent flying. The attack connects, a huge explosion right at his feet, and he just rockets across the deck of the Baratie. It looks bad. Krieg lets out a triumphant laugh, thinking he's just taken out the main threat with one clever, dishonorable blow.
But this is Monkey D. Luffy we're talking about. His trajectory is not exactly predictable. He is a creature of chaotic physics.
It's the most perfect, ridiculous Luffy-esque moment. He flies through the air, completely out of control,
arms and legs pinwheeling. He's screaming, not in pain, but in surprise, and his flight path takes him directly over the new battlefield where Sanji is facing Pearl.
And he comes down head first.
Right on top of Pearl's head. Just a perfect accidental rubbery Gomu Gomu no headbutt from above. It's not even a fight. It's a gag. A slapstick solution to a dramatic standoff.
The Invincible Pearl, this mountain of a man with supposedly impenetrable armor, who was just bragging about his unblemished record, is taken out by a boy falling out of the sky by mistake. Oda builds up this entire aura of invincibility around him, just to have it punctured in the most humiliating way possible.
The impact is hilarious. Pearl's head just gets driven down into his own armor like a cartoon turtle. Bonk. Sanji is just standing there, leg poised for a kick, with this look of complete and utter bewilderment on his face. He was all geared up for this epic clash of ideals, and a rubber idiot just fell out of the sky and did his job for him.
And then, the final moment of the chapter. Pearl slowly lifts his head from his gorget, a dazed, confused look on his face. He's clearly concussed.
And there it is.
A single drop of blood trickles from his nose.
The first time he's ever bled in battle. And it wasn't from an epic clash with a worthy opponent. It wasn't from Sanji's masterful kick or Zeff's legendary power. It was from a clumsy accident. The psychological damage from that has got to be 1,000 times worse than the physical. The indignity is the real wound.
Oda shatters his entire identity in a single comedic beat. It's brilliant. The man whose entire pride was his invulnerability is wounded by chance, by the embodiment of chaos itself. Luffy didn't just defeat him, he invalidated his entire life's philosophy without even trying.
It's a perfect way to show how Luffy just breaks the worlds of people like this. He doesn't play by their rules. He doesn't even know the rules exist. He just barrels through their carefully constructed realities, and they fall apart in his wake. Pearl built his whole life around being a fortress, and Luffy just accidentally tripped and fell through the front door.
It's also interesting, Oda's author comment for this chapter was about a Japanese comedy duo called Itsumo Kokokara. He mentioned how much he enjoys their work. It seems fitting for a chapter that ends on such a perfectly timed, unexpected punchline.
That makes so much sense, because the punchline to this whole tense standoff was a literal punchline to the head. Pearl, the invincible man, knocked out by a falling idiot. Super.
A perfect, chaotic end to a chapter that was all about codes and principles. In the end, the most rigid code was broken by the one person who has no code at all, aside from freedom and friendship.
It's just so good. We learned so much about Sanji's soul, about Krieg's cowardice, and we got a classic world-breaking Luffy moment all in one. Fantastic chapter.
If you think Sanji's code is one of the coolest character introductions we've seen so far, let us know your favorite straw hat rule in the comments below. Zoro's vow to never lose again, for instance, or Luffy's simple refusal to harm a friend's dream.
Okay, predictions. What do you think is coming next chapter? That ending leaves a lot of threads hanging.
My first prediction is that Pearl is going to have a complete psychological collapse. His entire identity was built around the fact that he's never bled. That's been shattered. I think he's either going to fly into a mindless berserker rage, maybe setting himself on fire, as his character design seems to hint at, or he's going to become completely catatonic and useless to Krieg. The invulnerable man has been proven vulnerable, and I don't think his mind can handle that reality.
Ooh, I like that. The unbeatable man completely broken. I could see him just starting to sob. What else?
Zoro has been off-screen during this whole exchange, but you just know he's aware of what's happening. My second prediction is that he's going to find Sanji after this. Not a long speech, just a short, gruff acknowledgement that Sanji is following his teachings. Like, good. It will be a small moment, but it will speak volumes about their shared history and respect.
Yeah, a little moment of validation from the old man. I can see that. Okay, my turn. My first prediction is that Luffy is going to pop right back up from Krieg's attack, totally fine because he's made of rubber, brush himself off, and his first words are going to be complaining that Krieg interrupted the cool fight he was watching. He'll completely ignore the fact that he was just attacked, and instead get mad about the ruined entertainment. And that casual, unintentional disrespect is going to enrage Don Krieg more than any attack ever could.
The ultimate disrespect is not fear, but indifference. I can see that happening. Luffy doesn't see Krieg as a threat, just an annoyance.
Exactly. And for my second one, now that Pearl, the second mate, is down for the count, the pressure is going to fall on Jin. He's been standing there on the side, torn. I predict Krieg is going to turn to him, furious that his invincible man went down, and order him to fight Sanji. And we're going to see Jin's internal conflict, his debt of life to Sanji versus his loyalty and fear of Krieg, finally come to a head. He's going to be forced to make a choice.
The reluctant warrior steps into the spotlight. That feels inevitable. His story has been building since he first appeared, starving and broken. It's time for him to act.
Right? He can't stay on the sidelines forever. The real fight of the Baratie arc might not be Luffy versus Krieg, but Jin versus his own loyalties.
Those are solid predictions. I'm very interested to see whose principles win out in the end. Sanji's code of honor, Krieg's code of pragmatism, or Jin's struggle between the two.
It's going to be a clash of wills for sure. That's all the time we have for this week. Thank you for tuning in to Inherited Dawn.
We'll see you next time for Chapter 55. May your hands be used for creation.